Welcome in to the 𝒂𝒂𝒅 podcast, episode 130. I am Lukach, once again joined by Hank LoForte, Vinnie Alfino, and Steven Hardesty, as we are going to break down the recent class of 2028 player rankings updates. And gentlemen, we're done with rankings for now. It's a grind, it's a bear, it's a lot of conversation, it's a lot of back and forth. But, I given what the industry has told us, we tend to be on the right track with most of these rankings. And I think with the 2028 rankings, given the kind of newness of the group, I think we did a pretty good job with this class as a whole and with the expansion of it to 150 players.
Agreed. I think really like within that top 10, I think that top 5 group, I would be hard pressed to see any of those guys ever slide if they don't get hurt. That bottom 5, there might be some shuffling, but that top 5 looks really good.
Yeah, the 28s, I mean, just from going over the course of the year, it was fun to kind of just see the guys who stuck out up here for me. But I think I'm still trying to get a pretty good feel for this class, honestly, just in terms of like the talent. But from the guys I've seen up here and the guys that you talked about, I mean, I would say it's a pretty promising class.
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely the top half of this class is already showing a lot of promise. And then like most classes in their, younger years, got to be a little patient. But now that we're expanding to 150, I think we saw a lot of guys into the spring, into the summer that have kind of come onto the scene. And I think it's going to continue to shape up to be a really deep class going forward for sure.
Yeah, well, this is the second update to this class after our initial rankings post of the class back in December of last year. We updated in May at the end of the high school season, and now in September at the end of the summer season. With that came an expansion to 100 from 100 to 150 players. The top 10, we saw a little bit of movement, right? 2 new entrants into the top 10. A new number 1, where, it's kind of hard to argue when you watch a kid who is in the 2028 class, go out in one of the bigger events of the summer and throws 8 straight pitches at 100 miles an hour. Obviously, I'm talking about 𝒀𝒂𝒓𝒅, the right-handed pitcher, first baseman out of Santiago out in Corona. Number 2 is a guy, Hardy, who you've been pretty fond of since last fall prior to his freshman season, 𝒂𝒂𝒓𝒅, the shortstop there at Sierra Canyon. Number 3, a guy from up in NorCal who Hank is really familiar with, Brandon Williams, the catcher. Number 4, the pitcher.
He does it all.
Pitcher does it all, right? Freshman, right? Does it all. Figure it out later. Number 4, a shortstop that Vinny saw a lot of out of Mount Carmel, Nate Godbold. Number 5, right-handed pitcher, third baseman that we've all had a chance to see a bunch of here this fall. I got a chance to see him during the spring, Jack Janeski, and then of Jay Serra. Number 6, Jordan Ayala, the right-handed pitcher out of Norco. Number 7, the shortstop, Jacob Gray out of De La Salle. Number 8, baby chef, Ryan Sheffer, the shortstop out of Oaks Christian High School. Number 9, another guy that you've been high on since last fall, Hardy Kingston Monet, the right-handed pitcher out of Sierra Canyon. And then rounding out the top 10, the catcher out of Liberty High School in Bakersfield, Brogan Whitker, who we had a chance to see at the area code underclass and, impressed me with his defensive skills. But guys, the top 10 is a pretty solid group of players.
Yeah, I really agree. I think you made a good point with Striker. Like it's hard not to put a kid as a sophomore in high school throwing 100 miles an hour in the number 1 spot. And I think like that was something I wanted to touch on with Theo's probably still the number 1 in 49 out of 50 states if there's not a Striker Pence there. So it's, he was number 1 going into the summer, and him going to 2 is not a product of anything he did. It's just, how do you not rank a kid throwing 100 miles an hour at 16 years old in the number 1 slot? I think Vinny and I were both at area codes underclass where Theo played with the breakthrough team. And after the day we saw him, we both looked at each other and said, he's going to be really effing good for a very long time. Like he does things that most kids can't do at this age.
Yeah, I mean, must be nice to throw 100 miles an hour at years old, especially 8 times in a row. But no, I agree. I think with this top 10, there is, you see some arms, you see some shortstops, and then you see the two catchers up there. So I think, it's going back to that, middle of the base of the field, lockdown. And then I think over time in this class, there's going to be some more arms that just kind of spring up, just how they normally do. But I think specifically too during the Valley's got a lot of kids in the 28 class that I think are going to make a name, especially in that Fresno, Baco area.
Yeah, I just love the athleticism in the top 10, especially a lot of middle infield talent, two-way talent, but you just look at guys that I think are going to project really well with the body too. As they develop, you're going to see numbers jump up even more than they have. But yeah, just in a really athletic top 10 group, with some range, they can play multiple positions, two-way talent. So
yeah, and Hank, I want to touch on Brandon Williams. I labeled him a catcher. You said pitcher. Do you like him more on the mound than behind the plate, or what's your?
I personally, I said that kind of jokingly, but Hardy saw it and he did hop on the mound to area codes, and he was 86 to 90, and it was strikes. So I mean, I say that, but it's like, hey, the kid might have a shot on the mound, but he's a really good catcher too. That's the thing is, I mean, you've seen him hit too, and he's 6'3", he's got that long, lengthy build, and it's like, dude, we could stick him in the outfield if it doesn't work. We could stick him at first. We could, there's so many different options you could do with the kid like Brandon. So I think for me personally, I like him behind the dish, but you never know on the mound.
Yeah, and I think the same. I think the same could be said about like Jack Janeski. I'm going to get that right at some point. It's an X, not a CK. Janeski, who I saw on the mound last year in the spring, and it's like, holy smokes, who's this 6'6" guy that's 87, 89 down at 𝒂𝒂𝒓𝒅. And then you keep hearing like, well, he's pretty good on the dirt too. And we've all had the chance to see him at scout ball down here so far playing third base. And, there's rumors that he might slide over to short. I don't know if he's quite athletic enough to kind of fit the bill of a Trinity League shortstop, but, he's certainly more than capable of handling himself at third base. And it's like, hey, we're freshmen. We're talking about now incoming sophomores, right? Like there's still so much time to figure out where you're going to play. But to be able to have the athleticism like a Williams, like a Janeski, to be able to do those multiple things, I mean, just helps on the upside and obviously plays into where they're ranked.
Yeah, that's like with Janeski, I went in expecting just to see him pitch at scout ball. And then he's starting on the infield. He's hitting in the middle of that Padres lineup, which was a very stacked team.
Yeah.
And he goes and makes two just fantastic plays at Pepperdine, picks up 2 knocks, and it's like, oh, this kid maybe he's actually really an infielder. Then he gets on the mound, and it's an easy 86, 89. It's kind of a funky arm slot, and he just absolutely pounds the strike zone. And like you said, that athleticism, you go, okay, if one side starts to backslide, it's really not going to matter because the other side's going to still really be really good on those guys. I think that's a good point with like Kingston Monet. He still plays the outfield at Sierra Canyon. Like he pitched on varsity last year, but then on the days he wasn't throwing, he'd go play JV games and get at bats, and he'd go run around in the outfield. The kid's a super athletic player.
Yeah, has the bloodlines there. Dad played at Oklahoma State and played some pro ball too, so that certainly helps. Vinny, sorry I cut you off there.
No worries. I was just saying, out of the 10 guys, on the top 10, I've had a chance to see Godbold the most. And, I think it's kind of similar to just the athleticism. He started at third base when the spring opened up, and by league play, he was over at shortstop for Mount Carmel. And, he looks the part at shortstop. And, the bat took a little bit to get going in the first half of the year. And then he gets, hits over 400 in league play. And, I think that kind of just speaks to, these guys are going to continue to get better and better as they get more experience at the varsity level. And I think I saw that with Godbold just from the first time I saw him in March leading into the CIF championship at San Diego State in May. It was just the experience he had was, drastic for him to continue to improve.
Yeah, and it's important to note a lot of these guys, some of these guys, I should say, like, Jordan Ayala was one of the better pitchers on that Norco team last year that, and he'll now kind of probably, I would assume, take over that ace role for them this year. And then you got a guy like Baby Chef, Ryan Sheffer, Hardy, who, we saw going into his freshman year last year at the event up at Ventura College, in January, was really good on the dirt, right? And then he hopped on the mound, and it's like, oh, that's pretty intriguing there too. The thought is that he will slide over and be the full-time starting shortstop at Oaks Christian this spring, a guy we're going to see this weekend up in Oregon at the Super Sophomore Games. So Hank will be able to get eyes on him there. But it's a guy that, again, you don't necessarily know where the future is because he's pretty good on the mound too.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk more about him later when we get into the risers because he did make a little jump up. But I think you make a good point on the mound side is like Oaks is looking for arms this year. They had most of their arms graduated. Like I will not be surprised if we see Ryan get prominent innings either in a bullpen role, maybe he winds up being a starter. Like it's going to be a lot on a young body, but the kid throws strikes. It's mid to upper 80s. It's athletic, and it's like he's going to get up there and. Like Carson, he's a competitor. Like if you tell him, hey, I need you to throw, he's going to do that. He did it at preseason All-State for me. We had a kid not show up, and now we're trying to get in that 21st inning of at-bats for everybody. And Ryan goes, hey, coach, I'll throw. And he jumps up on the mound, and he gets 5 hitters and gets 4 of them out and just throws strikes and walks off. And he's kind of got that little Baby Chef swagger to him. I'm like, hey, thanks. That was awesome. He's like, no, thank you for letting me pitch.
Yeah, he is nothing if not a funny kid to be around. That's
I think we missed one guy I want to talk about real quick, and that's 𝒀𝒂𝒓𝒅 out of Gray. He's got a little bit of an interesting situation just because he's got to play behind Tyler Spangler. So I think if he goes to any other high school anywhere else, he's going to be a starting shortstop, but for him to make De La Salle as a freshman, start every day, and play on the left side, like people I don't think give him as much credit. And he's not the biggest guy. He's like 5'10" maybe, but I think he's going to be like one of those kids where, he works hard. He's going to find his way back to shortstop eventually. All said and done, I could see him staying somewhere up the middle. But he's another one of those kids where he's just going to work his ass off and, see where he ends up and, kind of just, not the physical guy you want, but he plays hard.
Yeah. So watching him at underclass area code games, I think I was texting all of us like, dude, he's impressive. Just the way he moves, and he did play shortstop there. So I think that is part of his future plans. But I mean, even at the dish, man, some just very advanced takes, just the approach at the dish was so consistent. And as that body continues to fill out for him, he's going to be, really intriguing. Now, I mean, obviously, like you said, you're playing behind a guy that's 6'3", 6'4", and Spangler, like 215, whatever, 205, a grown man body already. There's a reason why he's such a high draft pick consideration guy, but I think when Gray gets his shot, he's going to kind of continue that lineage of quality shortstops they've had there at De La Salle for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. You go into a college program, they got their D1 starter that's been there for 2 years, and you got this freshman stud that comes in, and you're kind of like, all right, what can we do with this dynamic, or how do I learn from you, or something along those lines. But I think it's a good little left side.
Yeah, he's going to be just fine, I think. But as we get into the kind of meat and potatoes of the podcast here, obviously we're going to talk about a number of different players, but just the shuffling and the rankings, right? And I think we may have touched on this on one of the other podcasts, but it's not necessarily due to bad play by guys, right? Maybe they dropped a couple spots, guys jumped them, whatever it might be. It's just that over the course of the last 3 or 4 months, we've seen so many gains from other players, and that has caused them to elevate within the rankings, maybe causing guys who maybe didn't have a great summer, to kind of stay where they're at, maybe drop a few spots. So, just kind of want to get that out in the open. It's not where we think guys are going to end up in 2 years, 3 years. This is just kind of where we think guys are right now, right?
Yeah.
September of your sophomore year. And as we get through the rankings, get through the fall, we've gotten, Hardy, I know, a ton of schedules where we'll be getting out to a lot of games here over the course of the next 2 months. Kind of see maybe something we missed during the summer on some players, and then, we'll have another update, and then we get into the spring, and then that will tell us more of a clearer picture, right? Because there inevitably will be a handful of these guys who, as sophomores, either don't get a lot of playing time or get any playing time on their respective varsity programs. So we have to rely on those fall views that we get of them. And then obviously next summer, the views that we get of them. And I always go back to, like Gary Morse, right? Gary Morse came to the tryout for future games. And, I was like, dude, I'd never heard of you. Are you on the basketball team? And he's like, no, I was on JV. And even though I'm 6'6", I don't play basketball, right? It's like, wow, like, okay. Like, and Gary Morse has the potential to be a first or second round pick here next July. So like there's time, I guess, is where I'm going with this, right?
That's a really good point. No,
Yeah.
the time thing, like Gary Morse is obviously committed to Tennessee right now, right? But 3 years ago when he was playing, JV or whatever, he wasn't like, oh, I want to go to Tennessee. Like he just trusted it. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big point, and trust it and use the time wisely.
Yeah, I think like we're going to talk about a lot of guys that probably did spend their freshman year on JV and we didn't know who they were. And then we see them in the summer and all of a sudden it's like, this kid's really good. There wasn't a spot for him on varsity, or there weren't innings, and their coaches look at him and go like, I don't need you sitting on varsity just watching these guys play. I need you to go down on JV, get innings on the mound, go get at bats, go continue to get better. And I think that points out to this is where guys are now. Some guys are going to continue to get better, and they might pass up guys that we have in certain spots. Other guys are going to stay the same, and other guys might backslide. It's just a matter of continuing to get better as we go forward.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think we talked about it on the 27 podcast that everyone develops differently at different times. There's some guys now that, have a developed body faster than others. And then there's going to be guys in 2 years that are going to pass up those guys, not only on the field, but physically too. And that's going to play a lot and transition into the field. So, this is, like you said, Les, this is where it is right now, but it's going to be a lot different in 2 years. So, kids shouldn't hang their head if it's not where they are at right now, because there's a lot of baseball left to be played in their high school career.
Hardy, I think as a father of a 13-year-old and me as a father of a 12-year-old, we can both attest to the physicality, right? I mean, it's like, my kid has not hit puberty anywhere near it, and you got
Mine hasn't sniffed it.
kids who are as big as me, right? And it's like, hey, like everyone develops on their own time, right? So I'm gonna throw a curveball at you guys and mix things up a little. We're gonna start with the top 100 risers here. Guys that were already in our rankings, or guys that rose up into the top 100. And Vinny, I'm gonna go with you first here.
Sure.
Guy that we're really familiar with was on our junior future games team a couple years ago. Came out to the state games, has been to the preseason All-State, and just continues to just develop and get better and better. And that's Big Russell Del Castillo out of Damien High School.
Yeah. So, Russell was, my first time seeing him was at state games, and I thought he played well. And we talked about him kind of being more projectable on the mound, and rightfully so. He's up to 86 on the mound, and he's a strike thrower, high spin fastball over 2,300. Can spin a curveball, 3-pitch mix with a slider. But I thought he swung the bat really well at state games too. He had a big week over those, 2 days of gameplay. Was getting on base at a high clip, hitting the ball hard. And, he showed a lot of two-way talent for me, even though I think for him, his, projectability is more on the mound just because of the ability for him to throw strikes already. And even though he's at, 86 right now on the mound, he's 6'3", 237. And I think he's one of those guys that hasn't really figured out how to use his body yet. And if he does, that 86, I think, could see a big jump on top of the strike throwing ability. And that could have him polish into a really good player, and his brother Roman, won the MVP of our state games, but, Russell had a big week too. And, he got some time as a freshman over at Damien, and I think you're going to see him continue to, polish into one of their top end arms. And, the strike throwing ability is really intriguing for me, with the thought that he can continue to develop the velocity.
Yeah, and the bat certainly was nothing to sneeze at state games, like you said. He had a really strong week.
Yeah.
So, Hank, we touched on Jacob Gray a little bit there when we talked about the top 10, but I know as a riser, he, went from 12 to 7 into the top 10. And I know you wanted to touch on him a little bit. And, we talked about his future abilities, but his present abilities are pretty good now.
Yeah, I agree. Gray's kind of one of those kids where, you just kind of got to follow him. But it's one of those kids where he's going to keep getting better. You know what I mean? Like, he's always around good players. His summer circuit's pretty stacked. And, I know him a little bit personally, and he's just got that work ethic. He's always working, trying to refine something. But yeah, I think with him, though, I'm curious to when Spangler graduates, how their infield dynamic's going to shift, because it is a big deal going from third to short. It's two completely different positions. And, you can ask any infielder, you can think like, yeah, in the mind, it's like, okay, it's an easy transition. But like once those angles and those balls are hit, it's like, it's go time. Speed's different. Clock's different. There's so many different factors. But I think Jacob's just a kid that he'll naturally overcome it. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what Gray's going to do this season out in De La Salle.
Yeah, it should be another very, very good year for De La Salle up there, up in NorCal, and kind of like Hank Hardy, we talked a little bit about Chef there in the top 10, but I know he's a guy that you and I could probably talk about all day, just and keep going. So. Chef makes a small jump from 9 to 8, but
yeah,
considering where this class is particularly in that top 10, I mean, to go up a spot is still pretty significant.
Yeah, with Ryan, like, I'm gonna try to keep this brief because I could talk all day long on Ryan. We all know that, but his freshman year at Oaks, he started on the JV level because there was some question about the bat for him, but the defense has never been a question. Like, that kid can flat out pick it. He went down on the lower level. He kind of got his confidence up. When he finally got up to the varsity level, he took off, and it was extra base hits. It was high average. He ran a couple balls out of the park. And I think that really pushed him with us because we thought the defense was really good. Now the bat caught up. So he makes the move into the top 10 after the spring. What this summer did was show that those gains and those developments were consistent. He kept swinging it well during the summer. He kept having good at bats. Everything I was hearing about him is he's hitting the ball hard. He's hitting the ball hard consistently. He's showing some power. He looks good at shortstop. And I got a chance to see him on the opening weekend of Scout Ball. It was the same thing. It was 2 hard hit balls. He looks comfortable at the plate. And that one spot move may not sound like a lot, but it just kind of solidifies where we think Ryan sits in this class now and going forward. And so we'll kick it back over to Les. And this is the guy that when I went in to pick my 3 guys, this was one I wanted to talk about. And I was like, okay, I was hoping you didn't get in here first because I know you really like him. And that's Lucas Urique. I think I said that right, out of Eastlake. This kid may wind up being the best pitcher in this class in the long run, which is hard to say when you got a striker Pence in there.
Yeah, in terms of a pitcher versus a thrower, right? That's hard to disagree with on that one. But, I mean, this guy, 6'4", 6'5", tall, lean frame. It's pretty athletic. The delivery is incredibly repeatable. He's pretty athletic on the mound, gets down the mound pretty easily. It's upper 80s on the fastball. Vinny, I don't know if you had a chance to see him at all during the spring, but, we've all seen him now in Scout Ball in the fall. He had a really strong summer, Bob, by all accounts, from what I've been told. And, talking to the head coach over at Eastlake, it sounds like, he's a guy whose development is just on a very straight upward trajectory. Considering where he was coming in last year as kind of a virtual unknown, just a tall, skinny guy, to now being this guy who, pounds the zone with 3 pitches, The breaking ball is okay. The changeup, I think, has potential to be really, really good. And eventually I think the breaking ball will catch up to that as well. But right now it's a fastball heavy arsenal. Like I said, about 84, 85 to 87, 88. In the one scout ball outing that I saw of his, he saw the 5 hitters, gave up 1 hit, struck out 3, and got a ground ball on the other. So pretty clean inning. And I will say that the inning the 1 hit was a little bit of a duck fart over the second baseman's head. So he wasn't barreled up at all. And even on the foul balls, he wasn't squared up on those either. So just an incredibly bright future there for the 28 right-handed pitcher out of Eastlake, Lucas 𝒂𝒏𝒌𝒊𝒔𝒂𝒏. But Vinny, another guy with another bright future down in San Diego as an outfielder who, me, you, and Hardy probably all saw during scout ball as well. Micah McCucci out of Mission Hills High School makes a 20-spot jump from 67 to 47. It's an intriguing bat on McCucci to go with pretty good defense as well.
Yeah, I got a chance to see Micah a couple of times during the spring, and the power kind of is what jumps out at you. Had 6 homers in 2025 as a freshman, which I'm not sure in terms of the leaderboard in San Diego for freshmen, but 6 home runs kind of jumps out you your first time on varsity. Still has some swing and miss, to cut down, in the batter's box, but that's kind of just more with the swing decisions. But I like the foundation that he brings on the offensive side of the ball. It's an athletic body that I think is going to project really well into an athletic outfielder. He had some speed on the base paths that I saw in some live looks, and played a lot of right field for Mission Hills as a freshman. I think you could potentially see him move over to center field for them, whether it's next year or the year after that. But there was a lot to like there in the spring. Got a good look at him in the fall as well. All things are trending in the right direction, which is why you see the jump with Micah. And Griffin Teicher, who just took over the Mission Hills program, is, I think, in a really good spot with the 2028 foundation he has with Micah and Daxton Hyde, who is another ranked player in the 2028 class. So, Mission Hills is going to be definitely an intriguing group to follow down in San Diego, led by those 2 guys.
Little plug for your buddy there.
There you go. Shout out.
Shout out to your boy.
Yep.
All right, Hank, go back over to you. A guy, another multi-position guy, right? Catcher, outfielder, don't necessarily know where maybe he'll end up. Can do both pretty well right now. As a freshman, Gideon Mayo out of Rodriguez High School makes a 29-point jump from 72 to 43, which, that's pretty significant. Now we're talking, close to being a top 40 player in the class as it stands right now. And that class will expand to probably about 300, 350 by the time these guys are all seniors. So he's got a good head start on a lot of guys in his class. Tell us a little bit about Gideon Mayo.
Yeah, Mayo. He is a kid that I kind of found late in the year. He goes to Rodriguez High School, but Coach Beasley does an amazing job with that group. They're super young. It's a lot of 28s and 27s, but they have 2 really good catchers that have been to our events before. It's Justin Gregory and BJ Smith. And so those guys catch for them. So I saw Gideon in left field. I see this monster out there. He's like 6'2". He's a switch hitter too, is another thing. Oh. And then I hear guys behind me. They're like, "Oh, he's a catcher." I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think he's better than those guys." I'm like, okay. So see him hit lefty. I'm like, all right, this he's pretty good. And then he makes a diving catch in left. And then I figure out he's young for his grade too. So I'm like, all right, this kid's legit. And then I hear that he made breakthrough, and then he was a starting catcher on breakthrough. But he's just one of those kids where you kind of hear about him keep going up and up. And I wouldn't be surprised if he makes another jump here in the next 6 months.
Got to like athletic catchers that can play outfield, right? Especially left-handed hitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talk a little bit about the bat. Is there some projectable juice in the bat, or is it kind of present pretty good?
From what I saw on the left side, it's more, bat to ball, but on the right side, he hit a foul ball that just aired out, and I'm like, this kid's a lefty too? Come on, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
But no, I think he's a projectable bat, and I really want to see him behind the dish more. just because I didn't get a chance to see him much. But he's another kid. He's right behind, like in that Williams area where, they're kind of holding it down.
Yeah, nice. Hardy, a guy that we've seen a little bit of here this year, you a little bit more than everybody else, given that he's up at Paraclete High School. Gavin Gorman, third baseman, right-handed pitcher, makes a jump from 66 inside to the top 50 at number 49. He's a guy that I like, the couple times that I've seen him out at VC, a couple of the events you've run out there.
Yeah, I really like Gavin. And fun story with Gavin is, so he made his debut after SoCal top prospect underclass last year. And then he went back to Paraclete. It's a small private school out in the high desert. And his dad's actually his coach there. And you would think, as a freshman, a lot of dads might put their kid on varsity so they get the experience. His dad kind of, and I was joking with this at state games, like, hey, did your dad put you on JV? And he's like, yeah, he told me I got to get better. I got to get stronger. And I was like, I like that. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, and I took it to heart because we talked about kids developing and making moves in different ways. And Gavin makes this move less on his baseball ability because we already knew he was a good baseball player. The kid went to the work on his athleticism and his strength, and he was significantly stronger at state games than he was at preseason All-State. And I think that dedication to what he did on that side showed up in his ability to play defense, his ability to impact the baseball, his ability to control his delivery down the mound better. Like, that physical development for him really shows kind of where he is on a track in terms of like, hey, this kid's a good baseball player. Now he's tapping into strength and athleticism. And I joked with him after state games. I'm like, I think your dad's gonna have a hard time putting you back on JV next year. And he just kind of smiled, laughed, and I was like, are you coming up to sophomores? Or I think he's gonna be at West Coast Super Sophomore. He was excited for it. He's like, I got another chance to show this off. So really big fan of Gavin. But when we talk about kids who are athletic and made really big jumps this year, this was an absolute, he's got to make a move up in Jonah Boyd from Ayala High School.
Yeah, that's Boyd came to our Rising Stars game 2 years ago. I probably screwed up not bringing him out to Georgia last summer on that junior future games team. Goes out, starts in the outfield for a bit in the fall for Ayala. By the start of the, fifth, sixth game of the spring, he takes over at shortstop for them, and it's an uber athletic body. It's just, he's super, super athletic. The swing still has a little bit of swing and miss, but I believe he hit, just over 300 on Ayala's varsity last year. And, as you guys know, Ayala plays everybody, right? Out of conference, they're playing everybody. Coach McGuire does not hide from the competition there. And, it's the defense right now is, in my opinion, way ahead, not way ahead, but it's ahead of the offense. But the bat has shown this summer, and it showed through the fall, the early goings here, that there's some power that's already developing. And, he hit a few homers last spring. He's got a few homers going into, scout ball here, and it's just going to continue to get better and better. And it's like I said, really twitchy, athletic frame. He made a play in a game that I saw at Mater Dei during the Boris Classic that, deep in the 5-5 hole where full extension, he's in shallow right, rises up to a knee, throws a guy out at second that just kind of left you scratching your head, right? Let alone that being a freshman. But, Jonah Boyd, when it's all said and done, he makes a jump here from 31 to 17. I think when it's all said and done, Jonah Boyd's going to be a top 10 guy, maybe even a top 5 guy because of that athleticism and his ability to stay at shortstop is going to really carry him. Speaking of guys with improved athleticism, Vinny, and guys that could potentially stay at shortstop. This is a former JFG guy, and Ethan Miller out of Centennial High School. He came out to the state games, and the first thing I said to him was, how much weight have you put on since I last saw you? And it was about 15 pounds, because from JFG's one summer prior to this event this past summer, He's added 15 pounds of strength, and man, his defensive workout was eye-opening.
Yeah, 100%. Ethan saw him at state games, right? And like you said, with the defensive workout was 86 across the diamond at shortstop. Arm definitely showed a lot of carry. Was 95 EV in batting practice. Ran a 7.1860, so had a really balanced workout. And he really stood out to me 2 weekends ago at University of San Diego during the Scout League, playing for the Royals, and he made a couple plays. Was playing primarily second base that day, but he made a couple plays up the middle that were kind of eye opening arm talent because he was making plays on the backhand, and then he had a couple throws on the run. Just really looked the part, and then he followed that up with a double that one hopped the wall in left center field, and just had an overall balanced day against really good competition that afternoon at University of San Diego. Hit 298 as a freshman, and like you said, he's continuing to develop the body. I think, like you said, put on 15 pounds of muscle. You're going to continue to see that, fill out as time goes on. But the talent is there on both sides of the ball. It's pretty balanced. I think the glove is a little ahead of the bat at the moment, but hitting 300 as a freshman is no joke, and I think you're going to continue to see improvement from Ethan Miller, like we've seen.
Yeah, his performance at state games was awesome. I mean, it's just a guy that's trending way up, and another guy, Hank, who's trending way up, goes from unranked to 36 after having a monster summer. Right, Connor Cleary out of Ukiah High School. Most people listening probably have no idea where that is. But this is a guy who had a really, really strong summer and earned that ranking of number 36 in this class.
Oh yeah, well deserved. And for you guys listening, where Ukiah is, so I'm about 6-7 hours from SoCal. Ukiah is about another 3 hours north of me. So about a 10-11 hour drive, 101 right up. But no, I'm really rooting for this kid. I found him at an ID back in, I think sometime last year, and we invited him out to state games, ended up tearing it up there. But I can say for this, he's kind of like a Mason Belding Jr. for me, in a sense to where it's like, there's not much baseball up in Ukiah. Okay. So it's not really a sports town heavy. It's kind of in the mountains, tucked away a little bit. So every time Connor does an event, he's just extremely grateful. He's one of those kids to where every time he gets an opportunity to do something, he takes it all in. Great family, but that kid knows how to work. There's not, like I said, not much to do up there, but so he's just straight in the cage, always working on, catching stuff. But, I think he's got a shot to be that premier catcher, first baseman type kind of guy. And I think now after this summer, he's finally going to hit the summer circuit, with like some known travel teams. So I think it's trending upward for Cleary a lot.
And another guy we'll see at the University of Oregon for the super sophomore games here this weekend. So another opportunity to view, obviously it's been 2.5 months since the state game. So, I mean, there's a potential, right, to see some even further development there out of Cleary. And Hardy, a guy from Castaic High School, which is not a school we talk a whole lot about, right? I mean, they won, I want to say, the D6 title a couple years ago.
5 or 6, yeah.
5 or 6, in their first year eligible. They ended up winning that title. I was at that game. That was a really exciting game there at Blair Field. But Orion Gonzalez, he's an infielder, right-handed pitcher. I know you pop your head in around that neck of the woods every so often, and this is a guy that caught your attention.
Yeah, I got a chance to see Orion. He had a monster freshman year at Castaic with a team that was pretty old. He was the young guy, and it was pretty impressive to see him hit. I really like the left-handed swing. So he jumped on our rankings after that, and he put up crazy numbers. Like, it was upper 300s batting average. But it was what he did on the mound where he threw like 21 innings for them early in the spring. He did not throw once they got to Foothill League play, but he didn't allow a run, not an earned run. He didn't allow a run over those 21 innings. And I think he had like an 050 batting average against, but I never had a chance to see him throw. So then I'm watching throughout the summer and I'm following him on Twitter, following him on Instagram. The videos keep popping up, and I really like the swing, and he continues to hit. And I'm like, okay, this guy's got to make a move up. Then I'm talking with a couple different people who I really respect out in the Santa Clarita area. 𝒂𝒅𝒄𝒂𝒔𝒕's just a little north of Santa Clarita as you're going up the Tejon Pass to head out to Bakersfield. And one of these guys, he played minor league baseball. He's a Hall of Famer at a Division I school. Like, guy can really play, and he knows baseball. And we were talking about the Foothill League next year, and I was like, yeah, 𝒂𝒂𝒓 lost a lot. Like, they're gonna be uphill grind. And he's like, dude, that Gonzalez kid, he may be the best player in Santa Clarita area right now as a sophomore, which kind of dropped my jaw because I'm like, really? And he's like, no, he's like, it's the real deal. Like, he's legit on the mound. He's legit at the plate. And I'm like, okay, because I really like the swing. He's like, no, he might wind up being better on the mound, and he's really good at the plate. So he makes a small jump up here. He's one that I'm going to definitely be following this year and going forward because he's got a chance to be a very, very good player. Kick it over to you, Les. And this is a guy that I love. He came out to JFGs with us last year. He was at state games, and he just continues to get better on each side of the game, but especially on the mound. And I think it's Milo, not Milo. I think he always gets mad at me because I call him Milo, but I think it's Milo Benatar.
Oh, that's funny. He's never corrected me, but we'll see. Maybe he'll do that soon as he gets a little more comfortable. But yeah, Benatar, as you mentioned, former JFG guy. You had a chance to see him pitch in the spring for Sierra Canyon. I did not, but just in talking to some of the coaches in that league that saw, that faced off against him. They think that the future there is really, really bright. And, obviously we saw him pitch at JFGs, obviously as an incoming freshman, but, a little bit different. 6 months later, you see it in high school ball on the varsity level. But we didn't get to see that at state games this year. We did get to see, the advanced bat to ball skills. I think he's added a lot of strength on the frame so far as a freshman. And I think the hit tool is really starting to take off for him. And, he had a couple of hits in the games, but his BP was pretty eye-opening in that, first few swings, he'd go to left field, next few he'd go to right center field. Then he'd kind of go to left center field gap and try to work the middle. Really professional approach to his BP that was eye-opening for me. But then the arm strength has really improved on defense as well, along with the athleticism and the footwork. And it's a guy that just keeps trending up, and he earned that 20-point jump from 60 to 40. And it's a guy, if I'm not mistaken, will also be at the Super Sophomore games up in Oregon. So we'll get a chance to see him again. Hopefully, this weekend. I could be mistaken about that, but I'm almost positive he'll be there. But if we don't get to see him there, we'll certainly get to see him in the fall with Sierra Canyon. And then guys that we saw with the increase in the rankings from 100 to 150. Obviously, that brings in 50 newcomers to the list. And Vinnie, I'll kick it to you. And one of those newcomers that goes from unranked all the way to 26 had a really big freshman season and an even bigger summer. Mason Smith, the outfielder out of Palm Desert.
Yeah, so Mason Smith saw him at state games, like many of these others. And I remember on day one, Hardy, told me, keep an eye on this kid, because he's, he looks the part. So he was someone that I was really keeping an eye on early on. And from day one, he really stood out. The BP was, 98 EV, line drive approach, really simple approach in the batter's box that carried over into game, had a couple hits over the 2 days of live play. 86 from the outfield, ran a 6.8, 660. So kind of the metrics kind of jump out at you right away. And like you said, he had a big freshman season, so he kind of got everything going for him in the right direction. He's not 16 years old, he's 15 and a half. So he's, right where he's supposed to be as a sophomore. Body, I like it, 5'8", 150, but it's an athletic frame that I think is going to develop and fill out over time, which is going to have those metrics jump up in the future. But he was one of the standouts for me, especially in the workout portion, because, he kind of hit all metrics in the batter's box, defensively with the arm talent. It was accurate. And then the 6'8", 660, shows that he can play outfield, kind of in right field, center field profile. So really like Mason Smith.
Yeah, Hardy doing some PI work there on a lot of these guys from the state game, man. He said the same thing to me about a handful of guys.
Yeah.
Like, hey, keep your eye on this guy. I like him.
Right.
I spend way too much time on Twitter when I'm trying to go to bed. I'm looking at videos. I'm like,
Yeah.
who's this kid? Where is he at? I've never seen him before.
Yeah, a guy that I've never seen before, and Hank, you brought him in here, number 115 out of Selma High School. Again, probably not a lot of people listening know where that is. Jacoby Gonzalez, makes a move from unranked to 115, and it sounds like he's on a pretty good upward path.
Yeah, Jacoby, it's kind of like Cleary. He goes to a school where, Selma's like south of Fresno, if people don't know where that's at. So it's kind of it's a good baseball hotbed, that area, but it's kind of just in that neck of the woods. But yeah, Jacoby, he lefty infielder, can play pretty much anywhere in the infield. He's got a really good arm. His actions, they're true, they're clean, but they can be raw. Like he's one of those kids where you just have to tighten it up, because I don't think he gets the best baseball out there sometimes. So he's kind of got to do what he can, but he's a kid to where, if you just kind of monitor him throughout his next couple of years, he's going to be a kid you're like, I need this guy on my team. He could run. I think he can stay at short. He had to play third this year on varsity, but that he's got juice in the bat too. It's one of those gap to gap hitters. And then he kind of just spoils it, on those ones that are off the plate, or, he's kind of a pest at the plate. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Jacoby. Just trying to, there's guys out there that all like Jacoby, in those kind of tucked in areas, but they're out there, and Jacoby's just another product of that.
I really like what you said there about, it's talented, but it's still raw. I love those guys, right, who are nowhere near finished products as freshmen. Like with as much baseball as some of these kids play nowadays at 12, 13, I mean, you're seeing it, Hardy, with your son and kids in his group. I see it with my boys. I mean, with as much baseball, these guys, and we've all seen it in the past, right? Guys come into high school, they're, all everything, and they just don't get any better, right? I love those guys, Hank, that you just described, that are talented but still raw. Those guys fire me up. But Hardy, a guy that I know that you're pretty fond of here at a Frontier High School as a right-handed pitcher, Caden Nunez makes the jump from unranked to number 80. Tell us a little bit about Nunez.
Caden fits exactly what you guys were just talking about, that raw but super talented. He came out to our Bakersfield Summer ID. It's like this wiry athletic frame, kind of unassuming. He's a little bit quiet, didn't say a lot. But then he got on the mound, and it was some very, very impressive arm speed. It was a very athletic delivery. The fastball came out hot. I think he got up to 86 during his bullpen. He lived like 84, 85. He was spinning a good breaking ball. He spun the slider better than the curveball, if I remember correctly. I might have that backwards, but I remember one being better than the other. But the other one had the shape. He just didn't have the feel for it. Changeup was pretty good. And so it was like this very impressive bullpen, but the strikes were a little bit scattered. And now I spend too much time on Twitter and X at times, and I've watched his videos from Scout Ball, and he's in the zone. Like, he's throwing strikes, he's competing, he's facing older hitters, and he's having success. And I think Hank has said this multiple times about that Bakersfield Central Valley. Like, there are so many names out in that area that we don't know about, or we just haven't seen enough of yet, that are going to continue to pop up. I think Caden is now on the board, and don't be surprised if he makes another move and then another move as we go forward. It's a very talented player. Let's kick it over to you, Les. And this is a kid who I believe I saw in Scout Ball last year. And it was kind of an unassuming look, like he didn't do anything spectacular, but he looked really good. And then he's just continued to get better since then. That's Chris Woodson, the left-handed pitcher out of Corona.
Yeah, and I hate to break it to everybody who thinks that Corona, after the departure of 3 first-round picks, is going to fall flat on their face, but Corona is going to be absolutely loaded, and Chris Woodson will play a big role in that. Left-handed pitchers that are 6'3", 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", somewhere in that area are nice to have, but left-handed pitchers that are that big that throw in the upper 80s, touching 90 as sophomores are even nicer to have. And we've given the moniker of Baby Sheaf to Mason Sims there. But this guy might be the next one right after Sims, who just committed to Texas. But we're talking about a mid 80s to upper 80s fastball that has begun to touch 90, 91. It's a really good breaking ball. It's pretty loose still, right? It's not as sharp as he probably wants it to be, but it's a pretty good breaking ball that he lands for strikes. He's shown some feel for the changeup. He's athletic down the mound. Excuse me. He's got some deception in the delivery with, pretty significant shoulder turn and a high leg kick. But this is a guy I think that's going to kind of carry that mantle for Corona moving forward in the next few years, because it's a strike thrower from the left side. And those are hard to come by, especially at the high school level, who doesn't need to rely on a lot of deception to get swing and miss, or whiffs, or landing for strikes. So Chris Woodson, again,
Great hair too.
Plus, yeah, he's got 80 grade hair.
Just had to throw that out there. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm glad you did. I wasn't sure if I wanted to mention it or not. But
no, I have to give credit where it's due. So
you see that? I probably should. That should have been on the top of the list.
Just start rubbing it.
Yeah, 80 grade hair for sure for Woodson. But again, a guy that's going to kind of carry the mantle after some of these guys start to leave here. But, I think the big news there is that Corona is just reloading, right? They're certainly not going anywhere anytime in the future. Vinnie, over to you with the guy who absolutely will be at the Super Sophomore Games, the guy that impressed us all out of Ventura County Summer ID, Alex Noble out of Alemany High School, goes from unranked to 67. I have a hard time going back and looking at my notes on him, deciding which one I like more, him on the infield or him on the mound.
Right.
Because
Right.
on the mound was really good, and,
Yeah.
and he was really good on the infield, Vinny.
Yeah. Yeah, for Alex, like you said, I loved both sides of the ball when we were at Ventura College back in July. He was, 81 across the diamond. I really liked the arm action that he showed during the defensive workout. I think he has some, some footwork stuff to fine tune that could help kind of with his timing and rhythm, when fielding the baseball. But I like the arm action. He's wiry at 6'1", 173. Got into a few baseballs at a big park at Ventura College. Had a max distance of 354, but the swing was consistent. He was hitting line drive that had some takeoff into the gap to gap. But then he hopped on the mound, was up to 85, consistent strikes, was spinning a baseball over 2,200 for a fastball. Showed I like the changeup a lot. It was a 4-pitch mix, curveball, slider, but he was consistently throwing strikes with the changeup. And that just kind of intrigued me when we go to Oregon this weekend to see kind of, over the last 2 months, how's that going to carry into live gameplay, scrimmage when we were at Ventura College. And, I'm excited to see him, this weekend, which is why I wanted to talk to him about him prior for sure.
Hank, I'm pretty fired up to see Alex for sure out in Oregon for sure, Vinny. Hank, a guy that, comes from, I don't know, Granite Bay High School. I don't know how you would describe that as, the type of league that they play in. But, every once in a while, guys from Granite Bay pop up who are really quality players. And it sounds like Ryan Miller is one of those guys.
Yeah, Ryan, he wasn't on varsity. He's kind of one of those kids. I think he played freshman this year, but he came to our preseason All-State in Fremont, and the kid's like 6'1", 6'2", and he's got a lot of lift in his swing, and I think he was close to 100 EV when I was looking back at the numbers, and that's a kid to where you look at and he's going to be really good. He's got the frame, he's got the size, and Granite Bay, they're in the SFL, with all the really good teams up here. So it's not like they're in a bad league or anything, but they've been a little down as far as players in the past year, but they have a really group of 28s, I think. And Miller, along with a couple other guys in that class, I think, they could bring Granite Bay back up. But yeah, Miller's a kid where I'm keeping tabs on. And he's also got a shot on the mound too. So he's a kid that, he's exciting to watch.
Already a guy you are really excited after seeing him in scout ball this fall. Big league bloodlines, goes from unranked to number 13, and over at Mater Dei, middle infielder Emilio Young.
Yeah, it was a one-day look. I got to see him on the opening weekend of scout ball, and I'm always a dead sucker for a left-handed hitter. Then you say it's a left-handed hitter who's got a chance to play shortstop, and then it's a left-handed hitting shortstop who plays in the Trinity League, and it's really good. But going into it, I had no clue who the kid was. Like, his first at bat, he comes up, he smokes a single, and looks real comfortable against an older arm. Then I think he comes up, he gets another hit. In his second at bat, I had the camera out and I'm videoing it because I really liked the first look. So I wanted to see that he hits a triple. He draws a walk. He barrels another ball. He's playing really good defense. Like, it's a little bit smaller right now. He hasn't filled out, but it's just so athletic. So I walked over to the Dodgers. He was playing with the Dodgers team, and I asked the scout, and I'm like, hey, like, who the heck is Emilio Young? He turns around, he's like, it's Michael Young's kid. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense right now. Like, this is a lofty comp for him, but I see so much of Brody Schumacher in him in the way he does things. It's not this tooled up freak athlete. It's an athletic baseball player who's got a chance to be really, really good. And I kind of fought for him to be a top 10. I think we kind of put him just outside of it based on the frame. But in the long run, I could see him being in the same spot that Brody Schumacher is, as he's a senior right now. So Emilio's got a very high ceiling. We talk about
and they're boys. They work
they
out
are.
together. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what
dads are really good friends.
Yep. We talk about left-handed hitting athletic shortstops in Southern California, and we got another one here
With big league bloodlines.
with big league bloodlines. Tice Johnson, the shortstop out of Linfield Christian.
Yeah, Tice, all the reports on Johnson have been, uber positive. Obviously the son of Reed Johnson, former big leaguer. Tice will also be up in Oregon for the super sophomore game. So we'll all get an opportunity to see it up close. I know you guys saw it during scout ball. I saw it during scout ball. It's a really intriguing profile. He's bigger, he's athletic, he hits from the left side. He's got some present power. His head coach there at Linfield Christian, Gary Patchett, former scout here in SoCal, has been praising him and singing his praises for a while to me now. In fact, he actually helped get him to the super sophomore games. But this is a guy who, again, the major league bloodline certainly helped, but he's carving out his own path and, pretty physical for a sophomore right now. I'd say he's probably about $180, $185, standing at about 6'2", if I had to guess. We'll get the official numbers here this weekend, but, he moves really well on the dirt. The hand-eye coordination, the arm action really works right now. Really an indicative of him being able to stay on the left side. He might outgrow the shortstop position. I don't know. If the athleticism continues to improve, he certainly will have a chance to stay there. But Tice Johnson goes from unranked to number 57 after what was a really big summer and a really hot start to the fall so far. A guy, Vinny, that we saw down in San Diego at the Summer ID, who I know caught all of our attention with arguably the loudest round of BP at the Summer ID there at Maranatha Christian. Romeo Briones is a big-bodied first baseman, left-handed pitcher out of Helix High School, goes from unranked to number 103. But Briones is BP. It was one of those where guys that were waiting to hit stopped what they were doing.
Yeah.
Take a look at what was happening at the plate.
Yeah. So Romeo, I saw him when we were getting in line for the 60-yard dash, and what jumped out at me is just the size for this kid. And I asked him, what grade? He's a 28. And then I come to figure out that he just turned 15 right before, maybe a month or two before the summer ID. So he's young for his age going into his sophomore year. And like you said, the BP just jumped out. He was launching baseballs over the right field fence, max EV of 101. And, then he hops on the mound, 82, really heavy arm side run and sink. But, he's a guy that I think over the next, 2 to 3 years that we could just really be talking about a big power left-handed bat that can continue to make jumps because, being barely 15 years old, he's already 6 feet, 235. The body, I think, has a chance to develop. And, the bat to ball skills were just really, intriguing for me because it was consistent hard contact on top of the power. And, he put on a good performance on both sides of the ball, but the left-handed bat playing first base is, something that jumps out at you right away.
Yeah, the little kids over on the soccer field had no idea what was coming their way.
Yeah, 100%.
He was clearing that fence.
Yeah.
I was getting so nervous that somebody
Yeah.
was going to get hit.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, he was launching.
And they
balls
weren't close to
there.
the fence. They were well
Oh,
beyond
they
the
were on
fence.
the soccer field. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, a good 20 yards onto the soccer field.
Yeah.
Man. Those little guys had no idea what was coming their way. Hank, your last guy here with the 28s, newcomers, Mateo Zuniga out of Mount Whitney goes from unranked to number 92. I know this is a player that you seem to be pretty fond of as you pushed, quite a bit for him in the rankings update.
Yeah, Mateo, I've heard nothing but good things from him. Have a really good buddy in the Valley, and he was the one who kind of recommended me with him. And I'm like, what do you got? And he's like, dude, he's your typical leadoff hitter, left-handed, plays outfield, can run, defend. I'm like, oh, up my alley. Like, I got to see this kid. And the hit tool is legit. Okay. And potentially he could be one of the better hitters in the Valley when it's all said and done. He's just got like that high IQ in the box to where it just looks easy to him. And then I think with just, maturity and, growing up a little bit, the arm strength will come. Or get stronger, as I'll say. But no, he's another kid to where he's kind of like in the deep valley of Fresno, Visalia area. And, I think I wouldn't be surprised if more kids keep popping up out of there. So shout out to you, Jace.
Yeah, a lot of talent in that area, man. Like that's for sure. And, I love that, we're kind of dipping into that area a little bit more too. So shout out to you for that. Hardy, your last guy here, wouldn't be a podcast without Hardy repping the Ventura County area. So we're going to go up to Santa Barbara High School with Griffin Arnold, goes from unranked to number 95, catcher, third baseman. Tell us a little bit about the Dawn there at Santa Barbara High School.
Got to give the Central Coast some love. Griffin came out to the Central Cal Summer ID at VC, and to be honest, I didn't know anything about him. Santa Barbara's been pretty old for the last 2 years. They've had a really good team that's won back-to-back Channel League championships. So Griffin was down on the lower levels of the freshman, but he came out to the ID, and it was really impressive. Like, his defensive actions on the dirt were really good. His actions behind the plate were really good. He's got a strong frame for his age, but it's not completely filled out. He's got room to continue adding. And then again, a sucker for a left-handed hitter. He goes in from the left-hand side, and he's hammering balls to the pull side at VC. He runs a few out over the fence, and now it's like he's leaving, and I've got to reach out to some of the people that I know from Santa Barbara High and ask, like, who the heck's Griffin Arnold, and like what's the long-term plan for him? And everything I got back after that was like, we really anticipate Griffin to be a key piece for us going forward. Like, don't know if it's going to be this year or if it's going to be another year because they still are a little bit on the older side with him being just a sophomore, but this kid's got all of the raw tools. Now he just needs his chance on the higher levels to show how those tools play in game. I think that's why he's kind of in that 95 spot. It's the tools over the performance, but that performance clicks like the tools do. He's going to make a rise up this Last guy for you, Les. This is another Central Cal Summer ID guy, another lefty, but this time we're talking about a lefty on the mound out of a powerhouse Harvard Westlake program, and 𝒂𝒂𝒓𝒅.
Yeah, and Gamrat's a guy that we saw at the Central Cal Summer ID, and I remember you and I were standing behind the mound during the bullpens, and he started chucking it, and we just kind of looked at each other like, oh, okay, this is pretty interesting, right? Because it was 82, 84.
Yeah.
Vinny, I think you were back behind the plate with the track and you're kind of signaling the velos to us. And we're like, oh, okay, that's 82, 84. Well, let's see what the rest of it looks like. Breaking ball was just, two plain breaking ball. Then he throws this change up. We're like, oh my gosh, dude, like, who is this guy that Jared Halpert and his crew just pull out of a rabbit hat, right? And it's like, okay, this guy's going to get innings for them next year. And then as you and I saw, Hardy, because I like you, I spend way too much time on Twitter looking at videos. This is a guy, the velo is already up into the upper 80s, right? It's 87, 88 pretty consistently. He posted a video of some college camp where it was 89. And you're like, whoa, dude, if this frame continues to get bigger and stronger, I mean, it's easy to see that velo to continue to jump. Because it's a true 3-pitch mix, and it's a guy who's going to get innings, I believe, this year at Harvard Westlake, who, once again, like Corona, is just reloading with arms and with talent. But 𝒂𝒂𝒓𝒅 is a guy that we'll see at Oregon this weekend. I'm excited to see what he does up there because it's a quality 3-pitch mix presently. With the added velo that we haven't seen yet, from the rest of the summer, it's going to make for a really intriguing outing there up at University of Oregon this weekend.
Tip of the cap to the Sheffer family on that one. Mama Chef actually was the one who said, hey, we know this kid. Can we get him to an event? And I was like, yeah, have him come to an ID. And I texted Carson or Ryan afterwards, like, your mom really undersold how good CJ is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it goes to show just kind of the importance of the events, right? Because particularly as freshmen, we get asked often, right? Like, well, my son's just a freshman. Why does he need to go to an event? Because it's a great way to get a baseline of where you're at, right? And you get that baseline of the metrics. You get, all right, this is where I am as a freshman. I think we talked about this on another podcast, right? We don't want you to come to every event. Like, I would discourage people from coming to every event. Like, that's not the point of it. You come to one event, get a baseline for where you're at, go to work, right? When you feel like you've seeing some results from the work you're putting in, come to another one, see how much better you've gotten, right? And then, who knows, maybe it leads to an invite to a future games tryout or a state games or, a super sophomore games or hell, even in the future games, right? Some of those bigger events that we do were the gameplay events. But again, I just think it's so critical to, especially as a freshman, to kind of get that resume started with some baseline metrics, and just kind of build upon that in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like the freshman year, you're not coming here for recruiting purposes. You're finding your baseline. Like, where are you at now? And then come back in 6 months to a year. See, like, am I getting better? I know how many of these guys are working with private hitting coaches, pitching coaches, strength guys. Like, is what you're doing benefiting you? And then, like you said, okay, all of a sudden, now that does open doors to an invite event. It does open doors to maybe a future games. Like, there are kids who have gotten to future games that I don't think when we saw them as freshmen, we would have thought, like, hey, this guy's going to go to Georgia with us in 2 years. Charlie Cummings.
Totally.
Like, I love Charlie Cummings, but you couldn't have paid me money in September of last year to say Charlie Cummings was coming to future games with us. But
Totally.
that kid saw where he was at and went to work and earned his way to Georgia.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. Like, I think in today's day and age of playing baseball, the analytics have totally taken over everything. So it's like, even if you do go to one event a year, that's the name of the game. You have to get some type of analytics under your name, or else it's not even going to be a sniff. Like, the way I like to think about it is, if the kid's really good and he's got the analytics now, it just backs it up. It reassures me. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But, there's also kids like the ones that I love are the kids that don't do good analytically and statistics, but they're just gamers, right? Like, the kid you want, your leadoff hitter who'll spoil 10 pitches, but it's the kid behind him that hits 500-foot home runs, but he swings and misses half the time. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. That's just where I kind of look at it. But yeah, no, it's all good points.
Yeah. I think another thing with the events that, goes under the radar and very important, I think half the guys you talked about today, Hank, were guys that, there's not a lot of baseball going on in their area, and it takes sometimes for these kids to come to an event early for everyone to kind of, get to know them and understand, what kind of player they are, because there's only so many people that can go out to games, and there's some areas where we don't get out to a lot. And for them to come to events early, get their name out there, it helps separate them in the future over the next 2 years.
Well, it's also like if you never get out of your little bubble that you're in,
Right.
know how good you
Yes.
are.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
I could be the best player in Sacramento, but it's like if I go to an event in SoCal, there's like 10 of me down there.
Right.
And all that are better. So I think kids got to get that in their head. Like, hey, I may be the best kid in my city or even like the area, but there's a kid working 20 times harder in a different state that doesn't have twice as many resources that I have. And he's working way harder than I am. Or at least
that's such a great point.
So I think that's a huge disconnect sometimes is us in California. We do get a little lucky with weather and we kind of, can get away with stuff, but it's those other kids that are making do what they can. Those are the ones that shine up at the top.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point.
That's a great point, Hank. There's a guy who used to work for us years ago who's moved on to coaching now. He's now coaching in college. And, when he was talking about rankings, he would kind of use this model. And this is how he would present it to players. Like, okay, are you the best player on your team? Yes or no? Are you the best player in your league? Yes or no? Are you the best player in their area district, right? So in us, like in your CIF section.
Yeah.
Okay, yes or no? Are you the best player in your region? Yes or no? Are you the best player in your state, right? So it's like, if you think about it that way, like every kid has the confidence, like, yeah, I'm really good, right? Well, at least 99% of them do, right? But the fact remains, like, if you're the best player on your team, you're the best player on your team. Right? If you are the MVP of your league, others know that you're the best player in your league, right? If you're first team all CIF in your section, that means your region knows that you're one of the best players. And then when it comes to like our rankings, you're a top 10 guy, dude, you're one of the 10 best players in our state. And in our state, particularly, that means something.
A
right?
lot.
You look at MLB rosters, college rosters. I mean, in our state, that means something. So the responsibility that falls on us when it comes to rankings and getting them right, or at least not butchering them, it's a great responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, prove us wrong as a player. Like, that's the way I kind of look at it is don't be mad that we misranked you. It's like, dude, take it as a chip on your shoulder, get better. And by the next time we see you, it's kind of like, oh yeah, all right, you should rank me higher next time, like, but it's not like,
And how many times has that happened, Hank? Like
a ton. There's so many times.
A ton, right? Like, and I'm not.
We've had those conversations where it's like, man, we like this kid, we have him way too low. We got to bring him up.
Yeah.
Like, he went out and proved us. It's like that adage. If you're always the best player on the field, you're on the wrong field. Like, go find where you're going to get tested, and that's how you're going to find out how good you are. If you go to a field with a bunch of guys who are the top players in their area and you're the best player on that field, then you are the best player in this state.
Yeah, 100%, right? And I love I tell parents this all the time. I love when players prove me wrong. I love it. Like, I love it because that's going to tell me more about that kid than if he proved me right. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like this is an inexact science, right? Just like the MLB draft is an inexact science. I mean, you can go through the number of first round busts over the last 5 years and it's overwhelming, right? Yeah. And then conversely, you look at the 15th to 18th rounder that is a big league all-star, right? So it's not like every team passed on that guy 16 times, right? It's like, I mean, come on, like, it's an inexact science, right? And so I love that you said that, Hank. Prove us wrong. I love when I'm proven wrong when it comes to ranking of a player.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt my feelings. If anything, it's going to make me want to be like, okay, I missed.
It makes me like you more,
right? And it makes me want to work harder to figure out why I got it wrong, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the first place. So,
and granted, there's times where the kid doesn't have the best day. Okay. And I'm notorious for that. I'll go to a field, first time seeing a kid, doesn't do anything. And I'm just like, well, I got to look at something. And that's when you go with the character, the actions, how he acts. So it's not all just talent too.
Yeah. That's baseball.
I'm glad you brought that up too. I won't mention names, but the guy I saw for 4 years, right, had 4 hits and 52 at bats that I saw of his. And I'm just like, dude, is this guy ever going to hit? The guy ends up being a first rounder, right? And it's like, I mean, the guy's going to hit. It just so happens the 12 or so games, 13 games that I saw of his, he had 4 hits, right? And it's like, dude, I don't think this guy's ever going to hit, but somebody saw something. He ended up being a first round pick. So
that's a great point, because I saw that same kid and I only saw 15 at bats and he had 7 hits when I saw him.
Yeah.
So it's like the 2 different looks. It's like, and you and I had this conversation back and forth, and it was like, all right. And that's what goes into these rankings discussions and why we see so many players and we do so many events, is now we have the opportunity to sit and have that discussion, be like, hey man, I've seen him be really good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, 100%. Well, all right, that's enough of that kind of chatter. But guys, I appreciate you guys making the time to do this. We went a little bit longer than I think we had anticipated, but that's okay. A lot of quality players to talk about. Thank you, folks, for watching and listening. Make sure to check out prepbaseballreport.com for all your news, ranking, and event information. And until next time, we will see you at the yard.